After Kitty Ludesinger fled Spahn Ranch on July 30th, she was visited by Deputy Sheriff William Gleason of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office. Gleason was investigating reports of auto theft at the ranch. He'd compiled a dossier of information about Manson and the family, and first met Kitty when Frank Retz dropped her off at the police station. Gleason went to the Ludesinger's ranch on August 10th to interview her. Kitty told him about the auto thefts, drugs and guns, stolen credit cards, plus the underage runaways living at Spahn Ranch. Gleason looked up Manson's record and discovered the statutory rape arrest on June 4th. He realized that he was dealing with more than just a thieving group of hippies, but he needed a few more days to arrange to bring them into custody. Kitty was unaware that Bobby had been arrested for Gary's murder, but had seen the news reports about Cielo Drive and Los Feliz, and she asked Gleason whether the Black Panthers killed Sharon Tate. He replied that it didn't appear that any blacks were involved. "I had been programmed to believe it was the Panthers who did it," Kitty recalled. She didn't know that the family were the real culprits, but if she had explained helter-skelter to the sheriff, perhaps the killers might have popped up on the radar. Certainly if she had mentioned the words helter-skelter, wouldn't this have connected them to Waverly Drive? After her interview that day, Kitty went incommunicado for 2 months. She was about to return to Spahn Ranch. Also on August 10th, Gleason spoke with a male informant about Manson. The informant told the sheriff about seeing at least 10 rifles at Spahn Ranch, along with several handguns. The informant claimed that Manson had threatened him on at least one occasion. We do not know who this man was. On Monday, August 11th, Charlie approached Linda Kasabian. Again, as the only alleged family member with a valid driver's license not in jail, he needed her to do him a favor. Manson told Linda to go visit Sandy and Mary at Sybil Brand. It had been just over 24 hours since the LaBiancas were slaughtered, 48 since the 5 at Cielo were killed. Linda immediately thought of her daughter. She wanted to get Tanya and flee, but Charlie didn't let her out of his sight. She borrowed a car from Dave Hannum and drove to the women's jail. Writer Ed Saunders claimed that Mary Brunner called Melba Cronkite from Sybil Brand asking for bail money. Melba had none to give, but late the night she spoke to Mary, she woke to a pounding at her door. It was Charlie, demanding money. It's unclear whether Melba gave him any, but unlikely since Mary remained in jail for another month. Saunders also wrote that Linda drove to Sybil Brand that Monday, only to be turned away for failing to produce a valid ID. She had a driver's license, but apparently did not bring it with her. That night, Manson sent Linda to the waterfalls. It was a way of isolating her from her daughter, from the others. She was the only woman who had gone both nights and failed to kill for him. She needed to be watched, which then begs the question, why did he trust her to deliver messages to the jailbirds? Because of Tanya. Also, she told him on the beach in Venice that she was pregnant. Manson was jubilant at the news. Another life for the soul. He didn't think Linda would leave her child, and he didn't think she'd rat him out. But she was terrified. She had just witnessed her friends kill several people, and she knew that she was not safe. They could kill her. In fact, Charlie might kill her just for refusing to kill the actor early Sunday morning. And they could kill her child or use Tanya against her. Yet Manson preached about the sanctity of young lives. He chose not to send his killers into one home the night the LaBiancas were murdered because he saw pictures of small children through the window. So where was the line? What was sacrosanct in his eyes? This author believes that Linda thought that line stood at the family's own children, that other children may be sacrificed to serve Manson's needs, but that his children were safe. I believe that's the reason she told Charlie about her pregnancy. She thought this might protect her. By telling him, Manson believed that she was staying. She wouldn't betray him. She was committed to the family. That's why he thought she was safe to send out. He kept a watchful eye on her, but believed that she would return. That week, Manson warned everyone that cities would soon be in flames. He even held up a copy of the Los Angeles Times, the Tate LaBianca killings on the cover, a rare bit of news he allowed his family to view. On Tuesday, Linda was again asked by Charlie to visit Mary and Sandy, and to visit Bobby, and give him a message to say nothing. All was okay. This was her chance, she realized. She might not get another one. Linda explained. I felt like I was facing death. Innocent people were being murdered by this family that were supposed to be loving and caring and kind. This was the opportunity that I could escape. I went and packed a bag for my daughter. I had to hurry up and almost hold my breath so nobody would sense or feel my fear, my anxiety, my urgency to just hurry up and get out of there. I had to portray that I was on this mission to go see Bobby, but my intent was to leave. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi wrote, that night she packed a shoulder bag with some clothing and Tanya's diapers and pins and hid it in the parachute room. On going to get the bag, however, she found Manson and Stephanie Schramm sleeping in the room. Deciding to forget the bag, she went to get Tanya, but discovered that the children had been moved to the waterfall area. I tried to take my daughter with me, Linda insisted. She was at the waterfall, so I was not able to get access to her, but it was the time to leave, knowing that I couldn't take my daughter with me. This time she got her driver's license and drove Dave Hannum's car toward Los Angeles. But Linda did not go to Sybil Brand or to the county jail. She went to find her husband. She discovered that he had left for New Mexico, and she drove east to find Bob Kasabian. I got to New Mexico, which is where my husband was, and told him the story, and did not receive any support from him whatsoever. Understandable, considering she stole $5,000 from their friend Charles Melton to join the murderous Manson family, and then left without their child. According to Helter Skelter, Bob Kasabian suggested they return to Spahn together and get Tanya, but Linda was afraid Manson would kill them all. Kasabian said he wanted to think about it for a few days. Unwilling to wait, Linda hitchhiked into Taos and went to see Joe Sage. Sage was a rather colorful character. When the 51-year-old Zen monk wasn't busy running his macrobiotic church, he was campaigning for President of the United States on an anti-pollution ticket. Linda asked Sage for enough money to return to Los Angeles to get her little girl. That second day, Linda was supposed to go to Sybil Brand. Sandy was actually released. Mary, however, was held over. Manson let Mary Bruner remain in jail, Ad Saunders wrote incredulously. Her bail was only around $850, a sum that easily could have been raised by sending a trusted zombie on a bank robbery or perhaps a dope burn, since the credit card that Mary had forged had been stolen from Vern Plumlee's brother-in-law. The girls were thinking of driving up to see him to try to talk him out of pressing charges, but Manson, for reasons unknown, let Mary Bruner remain in jail until her release on probation late in September. That week, Manson was particularly stressed about the stolen goods on the property, as well as the underage kids. He arranged for two of them, 16-year-old Diane Lake and 15-year-old Hugh Rocky Todd, the son of a novitiate at Fountain of the World, to join Tex in Death Valley. He asked Bruce to drive the teens and the stolen goods to where Tex was holed up with Juan Flynn. A few days after Leslie's creepy crawly mission, Diane wrote, Charlie ordered Bruce Davis to drive me and one of the children to the little town of Lalanche, a nowhere ranch town on the outskirts of Death Valley, where we would meet up with Tex, who had driven out ahead of us. When I got word of our departure, my assumption was that Charlie was planning for us to escape to the desert, because Helter Skelter was on the horizon. Tex was at the house of a cowboy friend of his, along with Juan Flynn. Juan, Bruce, and Tex worked out a well-choreographed exchange of items, and I was left with Tex, the stolen goods, and the other young family member. At Spahn, things were getting witchier than ever. That week, Brenda ritualistically chopped off all the girls' hair on Manson's orders. Only Katie, with her long, thick brown hair, was spared the shearing. The locks of hair were later woven onto Manson's dune buggy and into a vest made for him by the women. Toward the end, they were cutting their hair in strange patterns, reminisced Barbara Hoyt. They cut it really short, leaving one strand or little loop of hair long, so it looked ridiculous. By cutting their hair, it was another act of giving up your ego. It was a little ego death, the death of the individual. I remember Sadie remarking to someone that I'd done a lot of things for the family, but I had not had sex with a girl, and I had not gone on a creepy crawl, and I should get my hair cut, that I needed my hair cut. Somebody said, she doesn't want her hair cut, and Sadie said, all the more reason to do it. I remember thinking, I didn't want to get my hair cut, and I didn't want to go on a creepy crawl. I was becoming more and more discontented. On Wednesday, August 13th, Gleason's warrant for the raid was signed. The main complaint was knowledge that there were stolen vehicles at Spahn Ranch. Dale Butler, co-owner of Butler's Buggy Shop in Chatsworth, confirmed that he regularly did business with Charlie on a cash basis. He told police that Manson purchased 2 dune buggies for a total of $2,300, which Charlie paid in $100 bills. Butler also told police that he purchased a '66 Volkswagen from a friend of Manson's that spring, Patricia Joan Baldwin, a.k.a. Madeline Cottage. She was registered at the Canoga Park, or Yellow Submarine, address at the time of the purchase. Butler's Buggy Shop took the engine out of Baldwin's VW and placed it in one of the dune buggies that Manson purchased. This likely occurred sometime in March of '69. But on April 9th, Butler discovered that Baldwin's VW was actually stolen from his own shop's storage yard. He reported this to Devonshire police, which began this investigation. A firefighter named Witt then found parts stolen from the Butlers in Devil's Canyon in the company of several male members of the family. When Witt confronted the men, they threatened him. Police ascertained that a person identified as B.C. was responsible for fixing up the dune buggies at Spahn Ranch. B.C. was likely Danny DiCarlo. Years later, Gleason spoke about gathering evidence for the August 16th raid. Charles Manson and some of his group just showed up at the Spahn Ranch and started living in the movie sets. I thought they were just a bunch of hippies, but we started getting reports that members of the Straight Satans, a motorcycle gang from Venice, were going to the ranch on weekends and partying. The word was that they were trading drugs for sex with the women there. Some of the women were runaway juveniles who provided Manson with cash and credit cards stolen from their homes. We also had reports that members of the group were shooting a machine gun. The Manson people were also stealing and building dune buggies and driving them onto adjoining properties. A couple of nights before the raid, we hiked into the ranch and found a stolen, brand new 1969 Ford and a stolen Volkswagen. That was the main basis for our search warrant, to recover these vehicles and identify who stole them. On Friday, Linda sent a letter to Spahn Ranch from New Mexico, claiming that Dave Hannum's car broke down and she was unable to return. That night, Al Springer and several other Straight Satans showed up at the ranch. They came to take back the cutlass sword and to arrest Danny DiCarlo from the family. They'd heard that the sword was used in a homicide. The last thing this 1%er club needed was to be accessories to murder. Charlie boasted to Springer about the killings on this visit. Al and his fellow bikers were equally concerned about DiCarlo, who could be implicated in one of the murders. He gave Beausoleil the gun and drove him to Hinman's. Charlie hinted that family members were positioned around the property as snipers. Just standard operating procedure, he mollified. That worried the bikers, who feared that Manson would harm DiCarlo if he tried to leave. But Charlie inexplicably managed to calm the straight Satans down. He even got them to stay and party that night. But Springer took back their sword. Once they got it to their Venice clubhouse, the straight Satans broke the weapon into pieces. That night, Kitty returned to Spahn Ranch. Still clueless about Bobby's arrest 2 weeks before, she got into an argument with her mother and called the ranch, asking for someone to pick her up. Gypsy and Sadie rode out to Devonshire to bring the 17-year-old back. Right there on her parents' driveway, Sadie chopped off Kitty's hair, leaving the one witchy strand. Sadie and Gypsy told Kitty to burn one hair, bury one hair, and turn the rest over to the soul. Kitty, who was only returning because she thought she'd be reunited with Bobby, glumly rode back to Chatsworth, shorn of her strawberry blonde locks.